On the 25th October 1983, the United States military, under the instructions of U.S. President Ronald Reagan, launched an invasion of the island nation of Grenada, codenamed Operation Urgent Fury. These events are now well known in Caribbean history. However, very few know of the role played in the invasion by 7 fellow Caribbean nations, namely Barbados, Dominica, St. Lucia, Jamaica, St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua and Barbuda, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This brief video seeks to share some insight on the role played by these brother islands in the staging and subsequent invasion of Grenada. Dominica, under the leadership of Prime Minister Eugenia Charles, played a pivotal leading role in the U.S.-led invasion of Grenada. As the chairperson of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, at the time, Dominica was instrumental in providing the legal and political justification for the intervention. Key roles played by Dominica. Initiating the request for intervention. Following the violent overthrow and assassination of Grenadian Prime Minister Maurice Bishop, Prime Minister Eugenia Charles convened an emergency meeting of the OECS. She spearheaded the formal, unanimous request from the OECS, Barbados, and Jamaica for U.S. military intervention to restore order. As OECS chair, Charles framed the invasion as a necessary regional effort to rescue Grenadians from a brutal military faction and prevent the spread of communist influence. This allowed the U.S. to portray the invasion as a regional rescue mission rather than an unprovoked attack. Barbados played a critical, enabling role in the U.S. invasion of Grenada by acting as the primary staging ground for the military operation, providing diplomatic legitimacy to the intervention, and contributing troops from its own defense force. Under Prime Minister Tom Adams, Barbados adopted a strongly pro-Western stance and, along with the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, and Jamaica, actively sought U.S. intervention. Barbados's Grantley Adams International Airport was used as the main staging area for the U.S. invasion force. At the time, the airport functioned essentially as a military base, and the U.S. government even provided compensation to Barbados for its use. Barbados was one of the key Caribbean nations that appealed to the United States for assistance. Prime Minister Tom Adams was instrumental in coordinating the intervention, arguing it was necessary to restore order after the execution of Grenadian Prime Minister Maurice Bishop. Barbados facilitated the evacuation of foreign nationals and was involved in the efforts to rescue Governor General Paul Scoon. Despite criticism from the United Nations and other nations, the government of Barbados, backed by a large majority of its citizens at the time, felt the intervention was necessary to stop the spread of communism in the region. Jamaica played a significant, albeit secondary, supporting role in the U.S. invasion of Grenada, serving as the largest contributor of troops among the Caribbean nations involved. Under Prime Minister Edward Seaga, Jamaica aligned with the United States to overthrow the military government that had taken power after the execution of Prime Minister Maurice Bishop, viewing the situation as a dangerous spread of communism in the region. Jamaica sent 150 soldiers, the largest contingent among the Caribbean forces to participate in the invasion, provided support and, later, a peacekeeping role, arriving after the initial combat phase. Prime Minister Seaga worked closely with the U.S. and Barbados Prime Minister Tom Adams to coordinate the action despite some opposition within the Caribbean community CARICOM. Seaga argued that the intervention was necessary to restore order, protect the Governor General, and halt the communist course of the revolutionary government. St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent played a key, albeit minor in troop numbers, role as part of the Caribbean coalition supporting the United States in the invasion of Grenada, Operation Urgent Fury. They provided essential regional political legitimacy for the intervention and contributed personnel to the force that assisted U.S. troops. These members of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, formally resolved to intervene by force in Grenada, arguing it was necessary to restore order and combat the spread of communism. The involvement of these OECS members was crucial for the U.S. to frame the invasion as a regional security initiative rather than a unilateral imperialistic action. Notably, the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Kennedy Simmons, one of the Caribbean nations that asked for the U.S. invasion of Grenada, said he did not think American combat troops should be withdrawn by Christmas of the same year. The leader of the newly independent island nation said after a meeting with President Reagan that fanatical elements, Marxist Leninist Communists still resisting the American troops in the hills of Grenada, provide a security problem. President Reagan offered no time frame, Simmons said. But White House spokesman Larry Speakes said Reagan's policy is unchanged, that U.S. combat troops will be out by December 23rd, although some of them may remain in a different role, perhaps aiding in construction and law enforcement on the island. Simmons, who asked for the meeting, came to the White House a few hours before American business leaders were to meet with administration officials to discuss economic aid for Grenada. A New York Times article titled, "Grenada Invasion Creates Rifts in the Caribbean," by Richard J. Meislin. November 13, 1983. Caribbean officials say the invasion of Grenada has caused new rifts among the countries of the Caribbean and appears to have set back efforts for political and economic cooperation in the area. Guyana's President Lyndon Forbes Burnham said of the United States in an interview Wednesday night, basically, "The prevailing attitude and ethic is that if they don't like your form of government, they are free to use any means, including intervention, to remove it." Divisions appear to have arisen principally between Barbados, Jamaica, and the smaller countries that took part in the invasion, and the 4 Caribbean countries that opposed it, the Bahamas, Belize, Guyana, and Trinidad and Tobago. Trade talks have stalled. Talk has been circulating as well of disbanding the regional organization known as CARICOM, which tries to gain cooperation on economic and political matters, and replacing it with one that does not include the countries that resisted the military action, but might include the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Whether CARICOM survives, said Rashley Jackson, Guyana's foreign minister, will be a measure of the maturity of its leaders. Thank you for tuning in to this video. I hope you find it informative. Feel free to share your thoughts and comments below.